Cassie.
Hi, Caitlin.
Hi, creepy people.
Hello.
Hello.
Sorry, my hand was stuck in my blankie here.
Oh, wrapped up nice and
I'm
cozy.
so cozy in my blankie that Caitlin made me.
I made it.
I love it. And I matched the background.
Yeah, you're very, you're on the theme that currently is appearing.
I can't wait to find out.
Yeah. Anyhoozle, this is PNW Haunts and Homicides, where we chat about true crime, the paranormal, Cassie's blanket, whatever strikes our fancy.
In where? Where do we talk about these things?
PNW.
You're supposed to say the Pacific
It's the
Northwest
Pacific Northwest.
or the PNW if you're nasty.
Yeah. Oh my God, I'm saying this under duress, which also is very on theme for today.
Oh God.
So you're welcome.
We also do a tarot reading at the end of every episode for just a little deeper insight into our topic.
Yeah.
So stick around if you're into that.
If you're into it.
Get into it.
Scott Scurlock was born March 5th, 1955 in Maryland. He grew up with a loving family in Virginia and had one sister named Suzanne. His mother was a teacher for special needs children, and his father was a preacher.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wholesome family
Yeah.
so far.
My next sentence, which perhaps makes the trajectory of his adult life all the more surprising.
Uh-oh.
Before long, the kids he'd grown up with were headed off to college, including his friend Kevin Myers. Though Scott would follow Kevin to the island in 1974, he wasn't nearly as academically inclined as his friend who moved there to attend the University of Hawaii.
Okay. I was like, what island are we talking about?
Yes.
The island who shall not be named. Because I will never go there.
Oh, well, come on.
Volcanoes.
The pair reportedly lived and worked on a tomato farm there until their secret marijuana grow-op was discovered.
Okay.
I feel like there's a lot of words in that sentence that don't feel quite right. I don't think of tomatoes.
From Hawaii.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm sure a lot of things are grown there.
But like they just need like a warm environment, right?
Yeah.
Warm-ish.
Warmish. Yeah, they do thrive in kind of like the California climate. Obviously in Italy.
Yeah. We grow tomatoes here. I mean, it's not
It's
like,
true.
yeah.
Very seasonally.
In the summer.
Yeah. By 1978, Scott was attending Evergreen College, along with another friend, Mark Biggins. The college community captures a smaller town feel than you might find in, say, Seattle, though it's still characterized by an earthy, progressive vibe, because it's like Auburn.
Oh, okay. I was
Yeah.
like, wait, is this Evergreen in Hawaii or is this
Nope.
Washington?
He's back in Washington.
Okay.
Yeah. That whole thing with the, living on the tomato farm but growing a different plant, it didn't really pan out that well.
Oh, I can't imagine why.
Yeah, I know. Bizarre. Suzanne Scurlock, his sister, described her brother, Scott, as an adrenaline junkie. Given his spotty academic track record and previous entrepreneurial endeavor, it may come as a surprise that at one point Scott aspired to become a doctor.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's aspirational.
Yes, lofty goals.
Yes.
However, that ambition fell by the wayside when he began working in the chemistry lab.
Okay. Oh, what's he learning to make?
He would go from being a single course away from finishing his undergrad in chemistry and biology, according to his sister, to being unceremoniously banished from the campus.
Oh, no.
This was following the discovery that he had been making meth in the college's lab.
That's the first thing I thought of when you said chemistry.
Yep. Yes. Yep. It's a real Breaking Bad moment.
God, that's so dangerous. In the schools, or not, it wasn't a school. It was a school. Yeah.
Yep.
In the school's lab.
The college's chemistry lab. Mm-hmm.
Holy shit.
Yes. It is very dangerous. He continued manufacturing meth and gradually gained a reputation for producing a remarkably pure product that many said was unrivaled at the time. So very
I
reminiscent
was like,
of Walter
yeah,
White.
I've only seen a few episodes, but that
Yeah.
sounds just like it.
Yes. Yeah. Minus the cancer so far.
That you know of.
Yes, exactly. Eventually, he bought a property deep in the woods of Washington state near Olympia, where he built a tree house, as well as a barn where the cooking was done.
A literal treehouse.
Yes, a literal tree house.
That's so cool.
I will show you some pictures.
Okay.
Okay.
I was just thinking the other day about how I wanted to live in a treehouse.
Yeah. Yep.
Maybe not his, but
Yep.
like I just want to live in like a really nice treehouse.
Yeah, no, a really nice tree. I mean, this was it wasn't a bad tree house per se, but
Oh. Whoa.
yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
He built this?
Yes.
That is crazy.
Yeah. We're gonna talk some more about the treehouse.
I mean, it looks a little shanky.
janky.
Janky. Looks a little shanky.
I mean, yeah.
But that's
I'll tell you more about it, and then maybe save your official assessment for the pod.
I don't know, it just like looks elaborate.
Yes, definitely, and he did have a lot of help.
Okay.
Yeah. The place was built around 7 huge cedar trees, about 40 feet up, with a gorgeous view of Mount Rainier. Seriously, the view, I mean, to die for.
Wow.
Absolutely incredible. Mark, his friend, who he went to Evergreen College with, and his daughter came to live in the treehouse with Scott when Mark's marriage ended.
Mm.
Obviously, this was far from a traditional dwelling.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you see the pictures, I'm inclined to think that you will agree. Aside from the remarkable bird's eye view, the treehouse also reportedly boasted an extra large fireplace because
That seems dangerous.
Listen, lots of houses are built from wood.
Yeah, and around trees, but just like in a tree, I don't know, something about that.
It feels a little bit weird.
Yeah.
Yeah. An outdoor bathroom, complete with a large bathtub, as well as an emergency escape zip line.
Wow. Shit, dude.
Yeah.
They thought of everything.
Really did. Scott's woodland Peter Pan lifestyle was in stark contrast to the norm of the era, for sure. Early 1990s Seattle was an exciting place with lots of booming businesses. Amazon, Microsoft, Starbucks, and the like had begun joining the ranks of Weyerhaeuser and Boeing.
Ooh, we've heard of them.
Yeah, we sure have.
Also 90s Seattle, grunge music.
It's a vibe.
Ooh.
That's so funny. My next sentence. The city also had a booming grunge/punk rock scene. Scott would meet with Captain Pat in the forested area up on his property. Pat was referred to as the finance man to transfer money and product, aka meth, in case anyone got lost.
Captain Pat, the finance man.
Uh-huh.
Got it.
Uh-huh. Scott would bring 180 pounds of product, and his counterpart would hand off $2 million.
That's a lot.
It's a lot of things.
I don't know how much meth weighs. Like, it seems like it would be pretty heavy, right?
Well, I mean, either way, 180 pounds of it.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
And $2 million?
$2 million.
Shit.
In the early 90s.
God. That's crazy.
Pat had been the one to introduce Scott to meth. So,
Nice guy.
Yeah. Once a connection's made, they business deals and whatnot. After Pat took care of the pickup with Scott, he'd take it down to Barstow to sell it to the Hells Angels.
They be methin'?
They be mething real hard, especially in this era.
Allegedly? Don't come after us.
I don't think we need to say allegedly, actually. I think there's been enough documentaries about undercover cops that were embedded in the Angels. I feel confident enough to just, I'm going to just say,
Yeah, but they scare me.
well, I don't think that they are the type to be offended by being associated with drugs per se.
Right. It's like their image, right?
It's part of the whole package.
They're so badass.
So beyond. After Captain Pat was murdered in 1990, Scott was devastated and decided that the meth business was just too dangerous for him.
Yeah, without your finance guy.
Yeah. So, I mean, the 80s, early 90s, yeah. I mean, still a very dangerous time for people in that line of work. Who would have thunk? On June 25th, 1992, Scott and Mark enacted a foolhardy plan for their next venture. Because at this point, like I said, Scott had decided, meth is kind of a dangerous occupation. When they entered the C1st Madison Park bank branch, it was their inaugural bank robbery.
Meth is too dangerous. Let's just rob some banks.
Right. Yep.
Got it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, listen, I have to venture a guess that just because you no longer mass produce meth means that you don't still perhaps make a little something for yourself, occasionally partake in some form or fashion.
Right. How long does meth stay like shelf stable?
I have no idea. It's a good question.
I'm just curious. Like
Yeah.
maybe I was wondering if he like had his own little stash laying around.
Yeah.
Or...
Yeah. I mean, maybe he had 180 pounds of it that he was waiting for Pat to come and pick up, and Pat never showed.
Might as well just, snort this and rob a bank. Do you snort it?
I don't know. Meth, I don't think is a snorting drug.
I don't know,
traditionally.
You guys.
Listen, I think we should stick to our wheelhouse. I've got a whole script. They were dropped off a block away from the bank by a friend of Mark's. The plan was to meet up after the robbery at a designated spot. After getting in, getting the cash, and getting out, they would take one of the bank customers' vehicles as a getaway vehicle to that agreed upon location, their meeting spot. Mark wore a Ronald Reagan mask. Just give everyone a chance to process that. And though he wasn't perhaps fit for a campy costume party, Scott was likewise disguised.
Wow.
So far, I didn't have a lot of notes for them beyond the obvious, which is, don't rob banks. They changed their likeness and swapped vehicles, which tends to at least confuse or temporarily slow down an investigation. So far, I mean...
How do we know it was a mask? What if it was just Ronald Reagan?
I think at this point, Ronald Reagan, I think he was spending a lot of time sundowning.
I mean, you don't know that for sure.
Oh, no, that's a verifiable fact. That's, yeah, I mean, I don't know exactly what year he started to really, wee-hoo, but.
Me neither.
I think so. Yeah. Yeah. Again, not going to fact check on that front because some of that is based in, anyways.
I like my ridiculous questions, okay?
No, I love the question. But trying to defend like the answer is like so. Yeah.
Weren't they like the people who started like the say no to drugs things?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sure were.
Okay, that's funny.
Yeah.
Say no to meth.
Mm-hmm. Dare to say no to drugs. Yeah. But they were also like pretty big proponents of abstinence only education.
Yeah,
from what I gather. And Mrs. Reagan, the first lady herself, Nance, was very well known for giving the best blowjob like that anybody had ever had.
How do you know that?
It's like something that's been like widely reported on.
How do they know?
That's her claim to fame. What do you mean? How did they
But
know?
like, how does anybody know? How my brain just broke.
I know. Because you would assume that people that are saying,
I'm picturing
abstinence
it.
only education are probably not doing those things outside their marriage.
That's interesting. I mean,
Mhm. Mhm.
I don't know.
Anyways,
Me
I
and
have no idea if that's true. That one I'm not going to come for and say, no, but
I like that fact. I think
it's a fun one.
me and Nance might have a lot in common.
Could be. Maybe you got a future in politics.
I'm coming for you, White House. They're not going to let me in.
No, not at all.
They won't even let me near that place, I'm sure.
What about the bathroom, though?
Right. We can go do a snoop in the bathroom. That's an inside joke from another show. We're not going to tell you what it is. You got to go listen.
If we keep this part in.
I think we should.
Well, we have a lot of story left.
I know.
This one may not make the cut.
I mean, if it's a little long, who cares?
Regarding this initial robbery, two versions of how it played out emerged, depending on who was telling the story. One version said that Scott went in, Mark followed. Then, when the latter man's nerves took over, he clumsily shouted for everyone to get down, which Scott quickly countered, instructing everybody to stand up, which is an actual nightmare because what the fuck do you do in that situation? People just want to follow the instructions and make it out relatively unscathed.
Yeah, just like, I don't care what I need to do. Just don't kill me. Like,
yeah, that's like a really fucked up version of Squid Games or something.
Oh my God. I'm kidding.
Red light.
So much anxiety.
I know. Now, in an alternate version, Mark remembered things differently, believing that everyone had already been down on the ground as he made his way, trailing after Scott, which doesn't really make a lot of sense because I don't know why people would already be down on the ground unless Scott went in that much further ahead of him.
Right.
Like, what are you, loitering at the door? I feel like probably it. I feel like the
just
first
like
one.
letting that guy, let's let that guy go in first.
Right? A little bit.
Why was I like,
I mean, the more we learn about Mark, the more believable that does sort of seem, but I don't think it makes sense.
Yeah.
It's believable, but it doesn't make sense. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
The way you said it didn't really sound like it made sense.
No,
but
it doesn't. Scott called to Mark. Mark, did you get the keys? As they turned to leave. Obviously, Mark is a pretty common name. That detail is not going to make them readily identifiable, but that was obviously a pretty careless mistake to reveal his partner's real name.
Yeah. What an idiot.
Kind of a bonehead move. At any rate, they tore off in the stolen vehicle, which, okay, everybody in that bank is having like not the coolest day, but one guy is having a really rough fucking day. He was just involved in a bank robbery and then had his car stolen.
Damn, dude.
That fucking sucks.
That does suck. I hope he's okay.
I know. I'm sure he's okay. These early ones, I feel like, yeah.
There's more.
Oops. Okay, well, I'm going to keep going. They neared their intended meeting spot, only to find that Mark's friend wasn't waiting there. The driver had panicked and gone to their plan B spot. So Mark and Scott went galloping across a golf course to Scott's van. So just dudes that look like they're basically dressed up for Halloween running across a golf course green.
Is it like the middle of the day?
I believe so. Yeah.
So you assume like people are probably out there golfing?
I mean, I also think this was a weekday, so it may not have been like super busy. It was probably in the earlier part of the day.
Don't the only people that golf like retired old guys?
Retired doctors, executives, I assume.
It's just it was an interesting thought. Like
the imagery is strong. Yeah. There had to be someone out there probably that like kind of spotted them and sort of corroborated the story of them having done this, I feel like. But I don't know. I don't know. Following the robbery, Mark said, "I'm never doing that again." Scott had a slightly different response. "Are you sure? Let's go do another one right now."
Right now?
Mhm.
Well, my dick is still hard.
Right?
Jesus.
Mark left town for a while, hiding out in Montana for a time.
I'd be scared like I
A
do.
little bit. I think he was just afraid that, I don't know.
Right. And to get
Yeah,
caught.
I just robbed a bank.
Yeah.
Robbery number 1 netted them $19,971.
Oh, that's not too bad.
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot more than a typical bank robber walks away with these days, I will say.
It's not meth money, but
No, baby, that ain't meth money. It's probably got traces of meth on it, meth or cocaine, likely feces as well. Invigorated and inspired to continue to perfect his methods, Scott was far from calling it quits, despite Mark's departure. I mean, he did have other friends, after all.
Oh, okay.
Scott's next co-conspirator was Steve Myers. He was an artist who had sculpted and traveled internationally that was quickly charmed by Scott when presented the idea of teaming up. Which is, how does that conversation start?
Exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Like, how do you go about that?
How does one? Yeah. Steve would say that robbing banks with Scott was by far his more creative endeavor, even when compared to what he'd done in the art world. Steve took to monitoring the police scanners and local patrols, logging the times related to their routes to plan their robberies. Steve also brought high quality movie-style prosthetics into the operation, which reminds me of Step Brothers, because of course it does.
Okay.
It's okay, it's not movie quality. It's a very iconic look. There's a lot of really iconic imagery that's associated with this case in general. But I mean, fuck the treehouse.
God, so weird.
Yeah. Yeah. The first robbery Steve and Scott did together was the very same branch that Scott and Mark had hit just 6 weeks prior.
I don't know if that's like really dumb or really smart.
Yeah, they do a lot of stuff like that where you're like, either that's really dumb or really smart. And I'm gonna need to wait until somebody smarter than me comes on the screen as the talking head.
It tells me.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. I mean, 2 things can be true.
Right.
The take for the second robbery was $8,124.50.
Well, they just robbed all the money.
Yeah, no.
Like, there wasn't any left.
Yeah. And it wasn't much better for the third, where they netted $9,613. I don't know that there was as much awareness or systems in place at this point, but having worked as a teller in the odds, I will tell you that they specifically structure and have protocols in place so that each teller only has a certain amount of cash in their, in their drawers.
Right. I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah. So unless you're going, and hitting like an armored vehicle or, something where you have access to a lot more, or if you go to a branch where it's like teller row and there's like 10, 12 tellers and you're, taking them all.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not crazy to think that you're probably not going to walk away with that much.
Yeah. Cause like, I feel like you're not going to be breaking into the safe. Like that takes a lot of time, I'm sure. Or you would need people to get the codes and things. Do they do that later?
It's interesting because I specifically didn't mention the vault. But
I mean, I assume all the banks have vaults, but that would be like
pretty
harder.
much every branch has a vault in some form or fashion. But
I feel like that's
Maybe this is a weird thing to focus on based on the information I've just presented. These guys just robbed 2 more banks after all. But all I can think about is why and how in the actual fuck did they end up with change? $8,124.50.
And 50 did the 50 cents. I'm like, but did they get like rolls of coins? But like, where does the 50 cents? Because those are all like even numbered rolls.
Yep. Yeah. No, quarters come in rolls that are a total value of $10 typically.
Maybe they dropped some.
I don't know. I'm just saying typically, unless we're talking about an old-timey robbery, I don't think anyone slows down to gather up the change.
Yeah.
But I digress.
Maybe it was on the ground and they were just like, hey, 50 cents. Cool.
I really don't think that. It's upsetting to me because I was almost done writing up this case and I'd watched a documentary and read dozens of articles about this case already before I realized I was like, that says 50 cents.
50 cents.
And I tend to trust this like source material. I'm sorry, what?
Were they taking money like from the people inside, like telling them to empty their pockets? Or?
Not to my knowledge. Yeah.
Interesting.
And honestly, when you look at the ROI just isn't there. Obviously with coins. It's heavy and doesn't have the same value that like bills would.
Yeah.
Listen, we could stay right here and focus on this for arguably another hour. We won't. You're welcome.
I just like to think there was like 50 cents laying on the counter and they've just swiped it.
I just feel like why would you even stop to do that? Like,
I don't know.
Have to get in and out fast.
I don't know.
Like I said, we could be here for an hour. The fact that the initial robberies weren't alarmingly large allowed Scott and his cohorts to fly under the radar, at least initially. It also motivated them to take things further by targeting the vault.
Oh,
you little smarty pants. That's when Mustang joined the team. She became a teller at the Sea First Bank to get them insider information about the bank protocols, including the deliveries arriving from armored vehicles with cash.
Wow.
I know.
I'm like bad person, but I'm excited there's a woman involved.
Like, what's feminism? You know?
Seriously though.
Yeah.
We don't hear that a lot.
I know. I was kind of like, ooh.
Mustang.
Yeah. Don't get emotionally attached to any of these people.
Oh, but Mustang. I'm picturing her as Aubrey Plaza for some reason.
Oh, yeah. I would say, based on what I know, I sort of pictured a cross between Donna from that 70s show and Aubrey Plaza.
Weird.
Yeah. Kind of a weird, very dry.
And hot.
A dry heat, if you will.
That's exactly how I would describe those two people too. It's like having a very dry sense of humor, but also like smoking hot.
Smoking. As they continued to perfect their plans, they developed some scripting. So everybody knows when you start to develop a script, that is when it is business. It is real. It is official. This was typically followed up by asking who the vault teller was.
Ooh.
Yep. Scott seemed to be truly gifted at handling the interactions within the bank, while Steve would be outside monitoring the scanner and radio.
It's like a whole operation, dude.
Yeah. Their first haul from within the vault yielded $252,000, now bringing their total haul for 6 robberies to $322,870 and 50 cents, of course.
Those damn 50 cents
really fucking bugs me. They progressed from teller drawers to armed takeovers and finally to vault takeovers. The FBI nicknamed him Hollywood, which was appropriate not only because of his disguises reminiscent of movie makeup, actually literally like professional grade movie makeup stuff.
That's cool. Like, not that any of this is cool,
right.
but
like that piece of it is like, oh, I see where the creativity piece of it comes in, because that's where his artist friend, really helped him out. But also because he apparently had been inspired by the character Brody from Point Break.
I don't know this.
I know of it, but it's mostly in connection to true crime. So,
okay.
He and his 9mm would make the most wanted list. So Point Break is, the long and the short of it, I thought I put more here in my notes about like kind of a brief summary of Point Break. But I think I also have another movie that they compare a different aspect of the case to. And I really had to kind of get down to the brass tacks. And so Point Break is basically like Patrick Swayze as like a surfer dude / bank robber, from what I gather.
You've had me at Patrick Swayze, baby.
I knew it. I knew it. Yeah.
Let's watch it.
We should.
I'm down.
Sean Johnson was the lead special agent of the FBI on Hollywood's case. His counterpoint from the Seattle PD, Mike Megan, was his exact opposite in nearly every way, according to not only those working with the pair, but their own personal assessments.
Oh. Uh-oh.
Yeah, so they're just rolled different.
Okay.
From each other. As the crimes became more high profile, they came under increasing scrutiny, which forced Scott and his accomplices to think outside the box in order to stay ahead of the authorities. Because all of a sudden they have somebody who's being referred to as the Hollywood Bandit that's making the news.
Yeah.
That's
going to get you recognized pretty fast if you keep doing the same shit.
Oh, interesting. Interesting that you would say that.
Oh, sorry. Did I ruin it?
No, not yet. Okay, so they would intentionally leave a vehicle behind for the cops to find, which seems counterintuitive.
Yeah.
But they hired someone that looked nothing like, totally dissimilar to anyone involved in the crimes. That person would be given $1,000 to buy a car and hand it off to someone on the robbery team. For that person, it was easy money for doing something that might have seemed odd, but certainly not enough to raise much of a red flag. In an effort to distort forensic evidence and whatever profile the police may have begun to form, they did a number of things to these cheap vehicles. They pipped that ride.
Oh, I was like, did they
in the weirdest way possible
have people jerk off all over it?
Oh, gross. Ew. No.
DNA?
That reminds me of Superbad.
Yep.
Featured.
That's why because you mentioned that recently. So that's why it popped in my head. I'm not always just thinking about that, you guys.
Yeah. You guys, she is literally always thinking about dicks.
Dicks and boobs.
Dicks and boobs.
What can I say?
What are you gonna do? Dicks and boobs. I like it when I say it like a news anchor. Dicks and boobs.
It's like your sign off.
Yeah.
That's our new sign off for the show.
Dicks and boobs.
Dicks and boobs.
Okay. Back to the non-dicks and boobs topics. They used mineral spirits to clean the vehicles down. And then in polar opposition, because remember, they just cleaned the vehicles, they would plant female hair in other parts of the car, essentially just trying to make it as difficult as possible to figure out what the hell was going on. Is Hollywood a woman who drives a beater but keeps it meticulously clean, save for the same things we all leave behind unwittingly, which is our hair?
Where'd they get this hair from?
I don't know. And okay, so I do and I don't. So they talked about a couple of things where they were like, oh yeah, they would just get hair from like a random like friend or something. And I'm like, but what if they were able to identify it as being her hair? Like, and you just drew suspicion to her. Listen.
Was the DNA stuff that good back then?
Yeah.
Yeah. So they could just like tell if it was like male or female. Or
I don't even know if they can tell for sure that it's male or female.
See that it's long and they're like, It's a girls. It's long.
These are girls.
I don't know why I said it like that, but
or like one of those crazy dogs that are in like all of the sporting shows, and they have like the crazy long, you know
really
what I mean?
long hair.
Yeah, I forget what those are called. Anywho's,
I don't know.
It's not totally clear how effective this particular strategy was, but they did a number of other things to obfuscate other aspects of evidence in their crimes. Because if they stopped there, I'd be like, weird choice. That's not one of them where I'm like, is that really dumb or really smart?
Yeah.
That one just seems like, like that seems like somebody who watches too much TV trying to think that they're smart.
Yeah.
Smarter than the cops.
It seems like a real like movie. Like
yeah, like a
like
kind of tropey.
Yeah.
It's campy.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Yeah. When there were multiple roads or routes leading to certain bank branches, they would hire lookouts who would simply radio, "Mama's coming," to give the robbers.
Sorry.
Okay, I'm just kidding. I know it's a weird thing. Okay.
Mama's coming.
Mama's coming. When there were multiple roads or routes leading to certain bank branches, they would hire lookouts who would simply radio, "Mama's coming," to give the robbery team a heads up.
Mama's coming.
Mama's coming.
Oh my God. That's funny.
I don't know why. It just really gets me.
Mama's got like, why?
It's got my funny bone. This seems like a pretty obvious yet effective approach. Obviously, like if you can have somebody tip you off, that's good.
Right.
For crimes. They would repeatedly rob the same banks, specifically to throw off the authorities, because who would suspect you'd return to the scene of the crime in this case?
Yeah, I mean, I like kind of.
Well, and here's the thing. I thought about it from the perspective of how the training kind of is for tellers. So I'm sure the bank employees thought much the same, like, which sort of bolsters statements made by some of them about how traumatized they were. Because you're trained that like it's very unlikely that a bank is going to like repeatedly be hit. Obviously there are certain geographic, demographic areas where, yeah, maybe that bank gets hit more than the average, but this is not the norm.
Yeah. Oh, it would just be so like, what's that word? I don't know. I forgot what I was going to say. Like it would just throw you off because you're like, oh, we were just robbed. Like, oh, like this is just a normal day. A couple days later, like nothing's going to happen because it just happened. It would just be so like off-putting or.
I know. I'm like, now I'm trying to think of.
There's a word I'm thinking of.
Well, I mean, it would really, I mean, off, like it would just make you feel off. Like you would, it's almost like being gaslit.
Yeah. Kind of like
I cannot think of the word that I want.
Yeah.
But
like I was thinking like discombobulated, but that's like a weird word, but
I mean, I feel like that kind of fits. Yeah. I mean, shit. We can Google some synonyms later.
Everyone comment with a synonym for discombobulated.
Oh my God.
Disorienting? I think that's what I was thinking of.
Yeah. The team would scan the bills from each take with ultraviolet lights to identify any money that might be marked to further avoid detection.
Ooh, okay, that's smart.
Smart.
Yeah.
They also scattered any bills with sequential serial numbers, something that occurs more frequently with brand new bills, as one might encounter at a financial institution, particularly in a bustling city like Seattle.
That makes a lot of sense too.
Sure do.
They're thinking of a lot of things.
They are, yeah. They would bury their gear in military canisters on Scott's property until they were ready to carry out the next robbery. Their clothes would then be burned in a nearby burn pit on the property as well.
Wow.
I know, it's that's a lot. That's a fair few hoops. Also, like maybe this is just because I'm a girl and I'm like, I typically wear clothes that I like, Like, oh no, now you have to burn it.
Well, hopefully they're buying clothes they don't really like.
Right.
And
They're
that
just,
they
yeah.
and that they would never wear. So that's
Right.
even more of
Yeah.
it like a
I know.
now I'm starting to think like them.
Right? Yeah. I was like, oh, I guess that makes sense. Yeah, okay.
I'm going to rob this in a fur coat because I would never actually wear that.
Never wear this. Unfortunately, now I have to rob the bank because I bought a fur coat. Fuck.
Damn it. Hey, man, you got to spend money to make money, okay?
60% of the time, it works every time.
we're just like just as smart as them.
Once that checklist was complete, there was still one final and crucial step left. Anyone with ill-gotten gains in the form of large stacks of cash can attest to the importance, as well as the difficulty associated with making said funds seem somehow legitimate.
It's like a full-time job.
Yeah. The next step was laundering. So it was off to Vegas.
Oh, smart.
Actually, yeah, I think so. I don't know if this is like considered like the gold standard or anything, especially these days. There's so many different schemes that people have come up with to launder money. But I was like, this actually, like, listen, either I'm a dum-dum and I just have no idea, but this kind of makes sense. I'm gonna get into it.
Okay. I'm like, do they try to gamble with it or do they just get the chips and then turn the chips back in?
No.
Okay.
Bitch.
Seriously.
Okay. Scott took to games of chance to aid in the money laundering, specifically of the sportsing variety.
Oh, okay.
He'd place equal bets on two teams at different casinos. So if it's the Dallas Cowboys versus another sports team, the Packers.
I was like,
shit, I should have written this down.
Chiefs, because Taylor Swift. That's the only one I know.
Right. So you place a bet on both teams that are playing the same game. They figured out that this way they'd get back all their money except the 5% the house takes. Small price to pay for liquid funds.
It's kind of like paying taxes. Like
just
less.
like that. Yeah. Just like that. Yeah. Because when you win and you have a ton of money on the winning team, you win really big.
Right.
And it evens out the loss.
That is.
I don't know if it still works that way. I don't know if you. I think that the major thing is they've made it really difficult for somebody to basically do this. They've made it really difficult for you to basically bet on both sides.
Right. I feel like they've by now have figured out people's scheming and scamming.
Hey, wait a minute.
They probably like take your ID and all that.
Yeah. They're like, that's not taxes.
I was totally just thinking like if you go to Vegas and get chips like with all your cash and then you don't gamble but you just turn back in the chips, they're going to give you different money. So it's like, wouldn't that just be easier?
Yeah, but like you have to like,
I mean,
that's a lot of money.
Yeah, that is true.
Yeah.
Sounds legit to me. I don't know.
Yeah, it just would be time intensive. Meanwhile, the investigation continued under the watchful eye of the public. David Curley of Cairo TV said it was a stunning sight when Sean Johnson of the FBI took to the local streets with flyers, talking to anyone that might know something. He said, it was a clear signal that law enforcement was desperate for leads. Quote, also a clue that they had no clue. I mean, it makes sense because they went to pretty great pains to, to make sure that law enforcement had no clue. I mean, they were doing everything they could to cover their tracks. Around the same time, those close to Scott said, though he never really outwardly acknowledged it, he seemed to enjoy the media attention for the mystery swirling around his many exploits.
I mean, if you're working that hard to keep it a mystery, then probably.
Yeah. Sean stated he wanted Hollywood to see him and know he was looking for him, which sounds like a little bit of a public dick measuring contest via the media, but to each their own, I suppose. For a time, reportedly, the authorities considered the idea that Hollywood may have been law enforcement himself.
Oh, shit.
The plot thickens. Spoiler alert. He is not. Not a spoiler.
Good theory, though.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think it's sort of a testament to some of the things that initially they did well, which feels weird to say.
Yeah.
But which sort of makes sense as a theory based on the sheer number of robberies with seemingly relative ease. They kept pulling them off. Because we've only technically talked about a couple, but there are quite a few.
Oh.
For a time, still unfazed by the manhunt and investigation pursuing him, Scott traveled quite a bit and donated significantly to environmental groups. Some had begun to identify the Hollywood Bandit as a Robin Hood type folk hero figure.
Of course.
Yep. Though Steve disagrees with the Robin Hood characterization, stating that if you look at Robin Hood, it was idealistic. He stole from the rich and gave, all of that nonsense.
Yep.
And Scott wasn't like that. He helped people that he knew if he needed something in the future to be done, he could call on them and they would do it.
Oh, so kind of like
a little more transactional.
Yeah.
Eventually, as their prolific crimes became more widely known, Scott's getup was recognizable enough that a customer called the authorities as he was entering a bank.
Uh-oh,
SpaghettiOs. Steve had to call him out of the bank when he heard the alert as he was monitoring the police scanner. That robbery was called off and they hit a snag with the next robbery as well. As Scott got into his getaway car, a dye pack exploded in the cash bag.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. So he was forced to toss it and take off.
Oh,
yeah.
All that work.
I know. Yeah, all that work. Despite occasional setbacks and hiccups, the team was always trying to do what the authorities would never expect. So in that regard, I do think it's like they did a lot of things that were sort of counterintuitive, and it did throw them off. On January 27th, 1995, at the C First Madison Park Bank, they did just that. This branch was a challenging target as they'd need to flee down Madison Street, which would put them headed precisely in the direction of police who would no doubt be in hot pursuit of them.
Oh, okay. Why would they do it?
Good question. Or how? It was that, or they'd have to go all the way around the area lake.
Okay.
Not a small detour.
Okay.
Steve suggested a third option. I think this is where that creativity comes in.
Go through the lake. Gotta make a
scuba dive. Yeah, tube.
Rig a pulley system.
Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, hey, listen, they already had the zip line thing at the
right?
Yeah.
Missed opportunity.
Yeah. Well, not exactly. Following the robbery, the plan was to get into the van while Steve waited out the heat at a local restaurant. Once police presence had dispersed, he would signal that the coast was clear. So you're just going to hide out in a van, and I'm sure it'll be fine.
Yeah. Was it like an unmarked van with no windows? It looks really sus.
It's actually so much better than that. I mean, it wasn't perfect because I am going to point out something that could have easily gotten them caught. But they retrofitted the van so that someone could get down inside under the floor to avoid detection, even if authorities flashed lights in through the windows.
Wow. Okay.
Yes.
Sheesh.
However, if anyone had been paying particular attention to that vehicle, they would have seen condensation building up on the windows from the hidden man's breathing.
Okay.
Luckily for them, no one noticed. Probably because they were out trying to find a bank robber, and they were not paying attention to parked cars.
Wow.
Yeah.
Condensation.
So they just never left the area.
Wow. Like hiding in plain sight.
Yes, exactly. I mean, it's kind of, I hate to say it, it's kind of brilliant.
Yeah. Is it dumb or is it smart?
Yeah.
Keep saying it.
It can be both. I mean, they didn't think about the condensation. I don't think that's like, I feel like probably most people wouldn't have thought of that.
I don't know. I had get condensation in my car,
Yeah.
or you can't if it like leaks and stuff. It doesn't necessarily have to be from someone breathing.
I think it would have been significant, like as if you were like, doing the nice thing.
Hey, stop breathing under there.
Yeah. Oh man, if they had done an oxygen tank, I wonder if that would have worked.
I'm totally just like picturing Leo's hand in Titanic right now.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm glad you stalled for a second because I would have been thinking about that when you were starting to talk, and I don't know if I would have heard you.
No, you wouldn't have. No, you wouldn't have. Time has proven. The FBI was fearful that he would become violent, especially as he began accessing the vault, because the stakes are significantly higher. When the vault teller wasn't present at one robbery, he said, "It's Christmas time. I don't want to kill anybody," before he used a stun gun on one employee.
Oh.
And honestly, that's the most violent thing that I'm aware of that happened through the course of any of the robberies.
Okay.
And that would be really scary, especially in light of specifically what he just said there.
Yeah.
And somehow we're still a little bit on Christmas. But
how'd we do that?
I mean, it was totally unintentional. And it's just like a quote that came up. Nothing else that I can think of really relates to Christmas, and
I'm wearing my Christmas present.
It's Christmas. It is Christmas until July.
Yeah.
The people that were present in these banks were traumatized.
Yeah.
Susan Dodd stated in the documentary that she was present for a total of 14 bank robberies, up to the point that they filmed the documentary in her career.
Wow.
One of which was the Hollywood bank robber. She said he had a very commanding presence that was very unusual. She wouldn't be the only one to note just how intimidating Hollywood could be. Friends reported that Scott started to get stressed. It changed him and the vibe around the beloved treehouse. Steve moved into a front house on the property, and essentially he lived there serving as a sort of gatekeeper. After all, the treehouse had drawn admirers on occasion.
I can't imagine why.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty like the house itself is a sight to behold, and then to be up in the treehouse and like the view and to see some of the, the details that are included in it. Yeah, I mean, of course, people are going to be, if they hear about it, they're going to be interested.
Yeah.
So that part doesn't surprise me. However, they could no longer risk having too many eyes on the property. Can't have prying eyes. No. Scott's sister, Suzanne, shared a troubling conversation about the state of his mental health at the time, and that he was clearly drinking a lot. She couldn't quite work out what had Scott so on edge of late. And though she was concerned, there was little that she felt could be done, which I feel like is unfortunately too often the case when somebody doesn't have just like an extremely severe episode. And when you're an adult, there's little that oftentimes your family can do, even if they are worried about what's going on with you. But
are they going to do an intervention?
yeah, I mean, lead special agent Sean Johnson of the FBI had spent innumerable hours working the case with many others. He had tried to analyze every piece of evidence and data that was available to get ahead of Hollywood. Based on his calculations, he believed that Hollywood was going through $21,000 a month.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
He was then able to predict that Hollywood would hit again on one of 3 days in the new year.
Holy shit.
Yeah. Sheldon Cooper who? It was the third of the 3 days that Sean had pinpointed.
Oh.
Meanwhile, the robbery team drew his previous cohort, Mark, who had fled to Montana, back into the scheme. On January 25th, 1996, the first interstate Wedgwood was to be their test run after taking almost a year off from the bank robberies. And of course, like I said, that also coincided with Mark's return. How they got him to come back, we'll never know. At the time, Sean was about a mile down the road from that very branch. Hollywood was good, but then so was Sean. While Scott was increasingly erratic in a number of ways, Sean had leaned into analysis that would continue to bring him closer to the infamous bandit. Yeah, I might have to run through like a list of all of the robberies. It is really hard to tell this story like strictly audio. It's wild. Just like the volume of bank robberies and all of the things that were happening in between.
Wow.
And his backstory, even having watched the documentary, which I felt like was very thorough, at least in terms of the bank robberies. I was like, I'm sorry, what's this about a tomato farm? What? Added resources from both the FBI and Seattle PD were combined to bring his spree of robberies to an end, because there had been a few of them at this point. And I might just have to go ahead and put like a list of them in the show notes or something. It's insane.
Oh.
It's a lot. This was at the inception of ProNet. It's basically like Find My iPhone for money.
Okay.
Yeah. I had to think about what was going to be the simplest explanation. And I was like, duh, it's Find My iPhone for money. It's a small GPS tracker that can be inserted in between bills. Not exactly anti-theft per se, because until someone's left with the cash in tow, there's nothing to track. But post-theft, also, that doesn't really seem like a thing. So anyways, it's a tracker.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Anyway, the devices were making their way to financial institutions. 2 were placed in as many of the bank branches in the Seattle metro area as could be managed. They were pushing them out everywhere.
Wow.
At the time, the robbery team had just watched the movie Heat, and it, quote, put the fear of God in them.
Apparently didn't stop them.
No. I don't think I've actually watched it. I've seen short clips from it, so I gave it a goog. Suffice to say, in the commission of the heist depicted, not everyone has a happy ending. It's a crime thriller that ends in a hail of bullets.
Hey.
Law enforcement was having a startling realization of their own as well. They had come to the conclusion that Hollywood would not go down without a fight. Their assessment was correct. As if they'd known his precise thoughts. Listen, no matter what, let your own hand be the hand of fate, and never let your enemy dictate your fate, Scott said when hiking in the Olympics at the top of Mount Washington.
Damn, that's intense. Like that whole thing was intense. The hiking, the quote.
Yeah. Some, perhaps believing they could see the writing on the wall, began to distance themselves from the robbery ring. Oh. And some of them probably weren't even aware that they were a robbery ring.
Yeah, because there were so many like little parts that people played.
Well, no, what I'm saying is like friends of their, like mutual friends of theirs some of them probably didn't even know that that's what these guys were doing. A lot of people that were close to them had no idea until after.
I see. I was also thinking of like the people, like the $1,000 to like drop off the car, like people who didn't even know that they were like helping.
No, absolutely. Yeah. No, and that's a good point too. One friend named Albin left for California, and before he did, he tried to convince Steve to do the same, but to no avail. 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, the robbery crew became aware of the ProNet tags. However, at a bank on 125th Street, they knew there would be $5 to $7 million for the taking.
Ooh.
They did a test robbery to try to figure out how to handle the tracers because, of course, they were consummate professionals.
Test robbery. Holy shit, dude.
Yeah. For the test, Scott went into a branch, but not in his typical Hollywood getup because it was recognizable.
Right. Like, why wouldn't you just totally switch it up?
Something.
Like, yeah.
They found the tags had been put in between stacks of $20 bills. The team was able to identify and discard the 2 trackers in relatively short order after this test robbery, so they felt pretty confident. I mean, doesn't everyone feel confident after pulling off a risky or complicated task?
Yeah.
Like just a singular time, though. I did it one time.
I mean, I would feel like, but maybe do a couple more tests.
Right,
I don't know.
Right. That was kind of my point.
Like, oh, we did it once. It's probably fine.
It's probably fine.
Like they won't switch it up after us robbing it and finding it. And then.
Or maybe we'll be handed a set of circumstances that won't be as easy as the first time.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, no.
Okay.
Something's going down.
Glad we are on the same page. On the one hand, they were confident they knew how to handle the new ProNet tags. But at the same time, Scott's paranoia and anxiety seemed to be reaching a fever pitch. He began to form a plan to hit multiple banks in one last hurrah.
Ugh.
The plan went like this. The first hit would be a small branch to divert the authorities just before hitting a second. And then a third. I feel like the whole third time's the charm thing does not apply to bank robbery. But according to Scott, it was, quote, it was not only doable, it was winnable.
Okay. I feel like you're going to tell us the opposite, but okay.
I mean, maybe a little bit. On November 27th, 1996, Thanksgiving Eve, FBI agent Sean was convinced that it would be the day that they would catch Hollywood. Anyone else he'd shared the theory with was simply waiting to see. At the C First Bank, Lake City branch, it was less than 20 minutes to closing, but seeing as it was the evening before the holiday weekend commenced, there were still a number of customers in the bank. As the team entered the branch, they probably didn't realize that one of the tellers had recognized them and immediately activated a silent alarm. The branch manager said that they had been specifically trained for how to handle this robbery team.
Ooh.
He used the trap money in his drawer and then also set off a second alarm by opening the vault with the duress code.
That's so, like, we think the robbers are smart, but like, this is also really smart.
They've built in things to the system.
Yeah.
The call went out over the radio, which, as we know, the team was monitoring routinely. When he received this update, Scott directed the branch employee to help load up money as he's holding a gun on him. They had been armed before, and I touched on it very briefly that these were, in fact, armed takeovers of the banks. That's something that they instituted pretty early on. but there are not, at least that I could find, as many scenarios where there was like a direct feeling threat like this. So,
Okay.
so it just feels like it's upping the ante, you know?
Yeah.
Um, as they made their way out, the police had not yet arrived, but they weren't far behind. Despite being told to stay down on the floor, one customer had boldly followed after the crew as they had fled.
Wow.
And was then able to provide a description of the getaway vehicle to authorities. It didn't afford law enforcement much of an advantage, as the team quickly ditched it and swapped into another vehicle, a white van. As they fled, the team was disposing of the tracking devices, knowing full well that authorities would be tracking them until they successfully disposed of them all. Even when one was discovered and discarded on the road, law enforcement knew there was a second device still present and active. Because of the second device, eventually law enforcement was able to catch up to them, at which point they executed a felony stop.
Ugh.
According to law enforcement, the initial shot was fired, or they assert that he attempted to fire. They identified Scott as the shooter, or would-be shooter, who had now moved to the driver's seat at this point. The van quickly came under fire.
Ugh.
Mark was hit, as was Steve, in the ensuing gunfire as they took off again.
Mark! Why?
I know, he came back and this. Finally, when the vehicle crashed and Scott took off on foot, he fled to the south without his injured friends. I mean, it is kind of an every man for himself, and hopefully you're able to, I mean, not hopefully, but you know
That's
what I mean.
What you're thinking as the criminal, like getting away. Yeah.
They are hoping that you get away, and hopefully with some of the loot, you know.
Yeah.
The Seattle PD officer, Mike Megan, who was then present, decided to return to the van to tend to the assailants still present in the van rather than continuing down the alley after the third, in what he called the fatal funnel.
He likes that alliteration. Megan, what's his name?
Mike Megan.
Mike Megan. Fatal funnel.
And it might be pronounced Magan. I never heard anybody say his name. It's spelled Magan.
Oh. Magan sounds, I don't know, more.
I don't know.
Mike Magan.
Sounds
Seattle
like a
PD.
cop. Yeah. I mean, it sounds like a cop on the East Coast.
Yeah.
He sounds like, you know, he's a real Mick, you know? Mark Biggins was in and out of consciousness following the shootout. Meanwhile, Scott remained at large in the area. Sean was at Harborview Hospital trying to figure out who the third perpetrator was, because they literally still did not know who Hollywood was. After 2 hours of questioning it's revealed that Scott Scurlock is Hollywood, which I feel like there's a little bit of an ethical question sometimes about questioning a suspect when they've been shot,
right,
and are, you know, in need of medical attention. But I think obviously he's at the hospital and he's being treated. Still feels a little potentially dubious to me, but numerous calls were placed by people living in the area trying to provide leads to the authorities. Finally, a call came in from someone who believed the third bank robber was in his camper on the back end of his property. Officers were dispatched to investigate further. They knocked on the camper door, but to no avail. They released tear gas, and a moment later, they heard a single gunshot. Following the single gunshot, they returned fire into the camper, allegedly firing 76 rounds into the camper.
Wow.
Feels a little over the top.
I mean, I understand because they heard a gunshot. They don't know if like they're being fired at, but that just seems like a lot.
Right. But if you heard a gunshot, nobody is seeing it. It's the only gunshot.
Yeah.
No one is apparently hit to then fire 76 rounds. And I get it. We are all humans, and there's a certain amount of instinct that no matter what training you have, that would be pretty difficult to overcome.
Yeah.
But I would argue, just looking at those facts on paper, it doesn't look the best.
Could they even see him? He was like
No.
inside. What if someone was in there? What if he had like a hostage or something in there?
Yep.
Or just like an
Begs the
innocent
question.
person?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah, that's a good point. Suddenly, an otherwise quiet North Seattle neighborhood found itself deluged with various law enforcement, including the SWAT team. Scott's sister, Suzanne, got a call from their Aunt Helen, who was absolutely frantic after seeing updates on the news. The standoff remained underway for hours, up until the point that there had been no response from within the camper for 2 hours.
It took them 2 hours?
Yeah, after that initial shot, and they fired 76 rounds in
I feel
2
like
hours.
that's not a standoff at that point.
It sure, I mean, they might have thought it was, but it sure wasn't. It quickly became clear that the shot that officers had heard on the scene was from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Scott Scurlock was dead from a self-inflicted gunshot wound at 41 years old. From the documentary, Mike Megan, Seattle PD, said, reciting the lines misattributed to Mark Twain rather than the infamous lawyer Clarence Darrow, who actually said it, that he would... I've never wished death upon a man, but I have read some obituaries with great pleasure. Which is, I get it.
Get it.
Same girl, same. But it really annoyed me when I went to look this up, and I was like, wait, is that a Mark Twain quote? And I don't know why that jumped out at me, but I was like, I feel like this is one of the ones that I've heard is frequently misquoted. And sure as shit, I look it up, and there were a ton of articles and talking about how it is. They're like, we don't know how this started happening, but it did, and now it won't stop.
Interesting.
Mhm.
That is so like, I don't know. I
Yeah.
don't know. I also don't know that this person deserved that. Like he wasn't killing a bunch of people, you know? He
Yeah.
was robbing banks very well.
Yeah. And I don't know that in our particular format and keeping sort of brevity in mind, that we have sort of the right platform or resources to really illuminate what I feel is the depth of some probably undiagnosed mental health issues that Scott and probably other people involved in this were experiencing at the time. And I think that's not to say that that is an excuse. You know, that doesn't make it okay. But at the same time, whether that was an element of it or not, I struggle with thinking this person deserves to die.
Yeah.
And in that way.
And he didn't just say that. He said he got pleasure from reading the obituary.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
I mean, it was a quote, but
I do think that
still,
piece of it is where it
got icky.
Yeah, it does feel a little bit icky. And that is so totally something that I would put on a fucking coffee mug that I would drink out of every single day. And I didn't like it that much in this context.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Meanwhile, FBI Sean stated his biggest regret was that he was never able to sit down with Scott face to face. He said, "If I had been in the vehicle that night, in front of that pursuit line, would I have done what Mike did? Shoot into the back of the van? No. There's always another day to catch him. Seriously, there's always another day."
Wow. And that's coming from an FBI agent. Like,
Yes, who predicted, like, within a set, like, 3-day period when he was going to be striking again and was accurate.
yeah.
The other piece of it is you have to keep in mind this was a residential neighborhood.
Holy shit.
This is a residential neighborhood where they shot into the back of the van as they were trying to execute this felony stop. So then as he is fleeing, he's fleeing into people's backyards.
Shit.
And this is a man that has said he's not going to be taken alive in so many words.
So they all knew that? Like, that was something that the cops knew? Or
I don't know that. I mean, that was not something that he had said to them.
Well,
you know, but I think they were getting a pretty clear indication and they were concerned that he would become violent. And I think knowing what they did know about him, backing him into a corner where they were perhaps not the best prepared. I hate to say ill prepared, but there were a lot of variables still that they couldn't control. So you back an injured animal into a corner, and these are sort of some of there are only so many potential outcomes.
Yeah.
This is the part that makes me like actually want to cry because
Aw.
I can picture his father, a former pastor. They show him walking around Scott's property and the treehouse, and Suzanne talks about their experience as the family. Suzanne described their family's heartbreak, a sentiment echoed by Scott's childhood friend, Steve Harper. It's really hard to see in this case where there's such a dramatic impact on this person's family and like the loss and the shock, all of that they experienced. Because as much as, he was described as being kind of a troublemaker and obviously he had been in trouble and, his sister described him as an adrenaline junkie. I just don't think in a million years, I don't think they saw any piece of this coming. Mustang visited Steve several times while he was in prison until one day he received a letter from her sister saying that she had died by suicide.
Oh, wow.
My understanding is that there were some things that were shared this is third party sort of statements that, it really messed her up. Really messed her up to see what had happened to these guys and to see like all of the damage that this caused in so many lives. I mean, the people that were present for the robberies, people who perpetrated them, their families. it's got tentacles.
Yeah. And she wasn't even involved at the end there, right? Or was she?
I mean, she had been working with them for some time. I don't know at what point, her being able to tip them off to things
Right.
ended, but
I guess you might not know if she wasn't like
yeah.
caught. But
My understanding is that, she was an informant to them damn near until the end
wow.
because I think that's how they learned of the ProNet tags.
Oh, that would make sense.
Mhm.
Man.
As shocked as his family was to learn of his crimes as they grieved his passing, many felt it was a sad, though not entirely unexpected ending. Mark Biggins said that in discussions about what they'd do if they were to get caught, Scott said, "I'm not going to prison. I'm going to head for the white light."
Mm.
Mark did, however, express regret about the trauma that was experienced by those present for the bank robberies. Steve Myers and Mark Biggins each faced state and federal charges. In 1997, both Steve Myers and Mark Biggins were sentenced to 21 years and 3 months in prison. No other accomplices were charged. Myers was released in 2013 and Biggins in 2015. Within a year of Scott's death, the treehouse had crumbled and tumbled down from the trees.
Oh, how?
Just fell into disrepair, is my understanding.
That's only like a couple of years, you said?
No, within a year
Within a year
of Scott's death.
It's like what I'm wanting to focus on this because it's less sad, I think. But I'm just like,
Yeah.
were they just constantly repairing it or would it have fallen apart with them like living in it? I was wondering about that.
Yeah, I feel like it's a valid question. I do think it was probably just, the inattention to it. When Mark was released, he returned to the property where he scattered some of Scott's ashes.
Oh.
A lawsuit was filed against Scott's estate by a group of law enforcement officers in 1997 for damages that occurred related to his crimes and capture. Within the next couple of years, the Scurlock family had sold the treehouse property to pay off Scott's outstanding debts.
Mm.
Restitution to the FBI, as well as those related to the lawsuit.
I don't know how to feel about that.
Yeah, it's I want to say it's a tough one, but I don't think it is. Actually, I think that if it's going to be really difficult for the public to go after law enforcement in any official legal capacity, they shouldn't be able to go after people's private estates.
Right?
I don't doubt that they deserve to receive recompense, but I don't know that it should. I don't know that it should come at. I don't want to say expense because I'm sure they intended to sell that property. I doubt that any of his family could have bared to be there on the property, but I don't think that it should have to come to that.
Yeah.
Because his living descendants did nothing wrong.
Yeah.
I kind of think that's a little bit of a fucked loophole in our system. Because sure as shit, if you want to try to sue a cop for anything, like the wrongful execution of a loved one or anything else, it ain't easy.
Mm.
It's a protection that is written into their role. And to some degree, maybe that's a necessity, but this feels this feels icky. This doesn't feel very right.
Feels icky again.
Yeah. And I think, unfortunately, some of this is just going to feel icky because icky things happened and there's no way for a situation like this to be resolved without there being hurt feelings and just, the general ick, if you will. But I struggle. I struggle with that in particular.
Yeah.
That doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
Between 1992 and 1996, the Hollywood Bandit and his associates robbed 19 confirmed banks, stealing over, are you ready for this?
I am ready.
$2.3 million.
And 50 cents.
My next line literally says, but let's not forget about the change. Yeah, this one is, I don't know. It's tough because I don't think anybody wants to sympathize too much with the bad guys, but I think there are some things like his family, they're not the bad guys.
Yeah.
I mean, if this was like a, generational family conspiracy, maybe I would feel a little bit different, like situationally, but that is not this.
Yeah. And he was, I mean, obviously, if you're living your life in a way where your out is dying by suicide,
head for the white light,
like that's just obviously there's some sort of mental crisis going on in there. If that's how you're living your life and that's like your plan.
So they actually read a number of excerpts from his, I would say they seem to be pretty extensive, pretty detailed journals. And there were enough people that knew him at the time that shared, whether it's things that he said or things that he did, that I feel like inform regarding his, mental state at that point in time. And I do think it would be hard to argue that there's not something there. It's a tough thing because for me, I sort of want to walk the line of addressing that, but also steering clear because I'm not qualified to diagnose that, and I have my own suspicions and things that I kind of have taken away from the case and what I believe, but it's like I don't want to put things out there that I don't feel like I can state with confidence and back up with facts. But yeah, that's the long and the short of it for me is that even if you know nothing about the case, if you read some of those journal entries or you heard some of the statements that he made to other people at the time, just with no context, I think probably you would think, yeah, there's a mental health issue here. There's an undiagnosed disorder or disease. And I think even in the 90s, things had come, a long way, perhaps, but I'm not sure that the resources that he might have needed would have been available.
Yeah.
So
I can't imagine.
Yeah.
Not like they are today anyway. For
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. And they still suck.
Yeah. And they're still not great.
They're still shit, to be honest. But, we keep working on it. I'm really curious about what we're gonna get here with the tarot.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Should we head to it?
I think so. Whew. Man, we need like a 60-second break in between. We'll see you guys in a minute. Yeah, you're like, I didn't know. I didn't know that I should.
I just provided all the cash.
Not all of it. Oh, man. Some of these are bills I wish we could spend. They're on loan.
Me too. Subscribe to our Patreon and give us some bills that we can use.
There you go. Okay. So I didn't show you. I didn't
Oh,
show
yeah, yeah,
anyone.
yeah. What's the card?
Temperance.
Oh, temperance. Okay.
It's a toitle.
I like
It's a
toidles.
toitle of some sort. Okay. Keywords are moderation, harmony, acceptance, resolution, cooperation, and patience.
Mm.
This lovely card often features a winged angel, male, female, or androgynous. In the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, the angel stands in a stream bordered by flowers. Obviously, we have a toidle.
Mm-hmm.
In some decks, the figure pours liquid, the elixir of life, from a golden vessel into a silver one in a continuous stream, suggesting the interplay of the material and spiritual worlds. Oh,
Mm.
that's blowing my mind. He was such like a spiritual person, but also so much of like his pursuits were focused on material wealth.
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh.
the word vessel relates to the great mother goddesses of antiquity. And the human body is often referred to as the vessel of the soul. Thus, both the angelic figure and the cups are symbolic references to the feminine force. Upright temperance indicates a time of inner growth and outer harmony. You're learning to temper your ego needs with the needs of the spirit within. With patience, you can blend disparate elements of yourself and or your world into a harmonious whole. In a reading about money, moderation is the key.
Yeah, you said moderation is one of the keywords, and I was like, yeah.
Don't expect immediate gains or huge profits at this time. This card may indicate a period when your finances are balanced, or it may recommend getting money matters in order.
Yeah.
If the reading is about your job, temperance represents a time of cooperation and relative peace in your workplace. It can also recommend distributing responsibilities and rewards among coworkers in an equitable way. Sometimes this card tells you to balance work and play.
It does seem like they were kind of like they were like a team working together, you know?
Mm-hmm. Interesting. In a reading about love, temperance urges you to heal rifts, avoid ego struggles, and seek peace in a relationship. It can also advise you to let a relationship develop at its own pace. Don't try to rush things. When temperance is reversed, a situation may be stalled or out of balance. All you can do is let matters work themselves out, which they will in time. Be patient. Trying to force inharmonious factors together will only cause bad feelings and poor results, like mixing oil and water. Extreme actions or reactions will likely backfire now. In a reading about money, intemperate spending may have plunged you into debt. Conversely, insecurity or lack of self worth may lead you to hoard money instead of enjoying it or finding ways to make it work for you.
They enjoyed it, right? Or at least one of them did.
Yeah, but I just feel like like the financial habits were very erratic.
Yeah.
If the reading is about work, you may have trouble handling the responsibilities of your job or balancing your professional and personal life.
Feel like that was getting there.
Could be, could be. Perhaps you're not using your time efficiently. Temperance reversed can also indicate lack of cooperation or discord in your workplace. In a reading about love, extreme emotions may provoke arguments or a standoff between you and a partner. Egos get in the way of harmony and happiness. Temperance reverse can mean trying to rush a relationship, which causes tension and frustration. There's an extra excerpt. Patience in all things. The word temperance derives from the Latin temperar, which means to moderate, blend, or mix together harmoniously. Interestingly, the card was named Time in early decks, which provides a key to its underlying meaning. Temperance encourages patience. Things happen at their own pace in their own time.
This is weird.
This is one of the great lessons of the Zen masters. There are times when nothing can be done and nothing needs to be done.
Or there's always time to catch them another day.
Mm-hmm. That's crazy.
Yeah, I was totally thinking of Sean?
Sean. FBI
Sean, man. He's like, yeah, be patient. Like, we can catch him again.
Yeah. You know, and I'm sure there are so many elements of the investigation, the case, all of the people involved that like we just can't ever fully know. But I walked away feeling like, wow, okay. So, I mean, thinking about how different um, factors of law enforcement sort of handled this. And it's different when you're in the moment and, you're there in person. Whereas, sometimes, you've done the legwork, but maybe in the moment, whether it's traffic or something else that prevents you from being like right there in the hot seat. Um, it's hard to know how you're going to react, but I did walk away sort of feeling like Sean's approach and sort of some of the tactics that he used and some of the things that he professed felt like sort of higher level. Um, and there's probably not a good way to really spin that as not being sort of like what feels like kind of an underhanded diss at, you know, um, the Seattle PD, but I just think it's a different caliber of, um, I mean, it, I don't,
I'm seeing what you're putting down.
yeah, I don't know how else to put it. And I'm really struggling to, to not put it in a crass way.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I think the situation may be a little bit different just depending on who was handling it. And, we're only ever going to know the scenario where it was handled the way it was.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Which is too bad because I do think there are things that we can learn from, sitting down with someone who has been this wildly, for lack of a better term, successful.
Yeah.
I mean, and truly, like, you can see the progression from just walking up and doing these, teller at the at the teller stand robberies and then eventually progressing to armed robberies and how they controlled the crowds and, the vault.
The vaults.
The vault.
Getting the trackers.
Yeah.
Like, and
Yeah.
I was thinking too this whole time, like their whole team had all the patience. Like the patience was like the word of the day. Like they did makeup and like test runs and listened to scanners and like hired people to buy cars and do all that. Like that takes a lot of patience and planning and
yeah. And I think it's sort of like they had the patience and sort of whether it's the ability or, they lucked out, however you want to put that, for them to be successful at a certain level. And I think when you look at sort of how it was handled by different bodies of law enforcement, I look at Sean and sort of how he approached it as being like, that's someone that is rising to meet that person where they're at to try to get ahead of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do think it's unfortunate that they weren't able to sit down with Scott for a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
But I think there's always something that we can kind of learn from those interactions in hindsight.
I think so too. I
Yeah.
think you're right. You're right.
Right. Also, we've said patience like 87 times.
So many times.
And we do have a couple of Patreon shout outs, and we are going to be doing those in our next episode. This one is already incredibly long,
Sorry
I
about
think.
it.
Sorry, not sorry, I guess. But patience. We've said it like 87 times.
Yeah.
And, as luck would have it, we're thinking about you.
Patience.
Patience.
Speaking of patience, should I read the little interpretation?
Give it to me, baby.
This didn't even like cross my mind, but I guess it's why they put the turtle on the card because it says slow and steady progress.
Oh.
And pretty much all of the other keywords are the same. There is wisdom in staying in my shell, thought Turtle. I am safe from the raccoon's prying paws, and the hawk will think me a rock. But soon she was hungry. The sun moved, and she was cold. She grew lonely. So she emerged. She filled up on mayflies and cool water. She found other turtles. She basked. There is wisdom in being open to the world, thought Turtle. A shadow of black feathers blocked the sun in the instant before the crow's beak struck. In that moment of warning, Turtle recanted her newfound philosophy. She retracted into her shell, and the beak glanced off her carapace. Ah, realized Turtle, slightly rattled. It is best to be sometimes in my shell and sometimes out. There is wisdom in that.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so
This is crazy.
Yeah. Okay, so I don't know. There are so many aspects of this. Like if you build a tree house in an isolated part of the woods, I feel like that it's so emblematic of like so much of his personality and experience.
Yeah, like hiding in his turtle shell.
A little bit, yeah. And especially once he really started to, as they kind of advanced in this whole scheme and he really started to become a little bit paranoid and like they withdrew and they closed off the property more.
Oh, didn't they like stop for a year, you said, or something?
They did. Yeah, they did at one point. Yeah.
And then it said something about finding friends. And
they literally drew the first guy back in.
Wow.
Brought him back from Montana.
Yeah, and then just like coming out and then being attacked and like almost, I don't know if they were ever like almost, yeah, they were like almost caught.
Oh,
yeah.
I mean, there were definitely some close calls for sure.
Like the
for
crow.
Sure.
Crazy. And then until, the last.
Definitely makes me think of that final.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Like they should have just stayed in their shell.
Yeah. Stay hidden while the hiding is good. Wow.
Okay, I want to know what the other card is.
It's the strength card.
Oh.
In reverse. And it's a fish. It's a salmon, I think.
Okay.
Could be that might be a salmon, or I feel like we've read it before. Maybe it's a trout. I feel like it's a Chinook salmon though.
Interesting. It's a sockeye salmon.
Sockeye. Okay.
It's interesting we got 2 major arcana cards.
Yeah. It's my card.
Wow.
Okay, so just right off the bat from the extra excerpt, this, I feel like it relates to something that I talked about really briefly because I didn't want to overplay it because I don't want this to be people's takeaway. From the perspective of numerology, 8 corresponds to pragmatism, material mastery, and financial success, whereas 11 represents humanitarianism, and equality. So this is it's a card that it's been assigned multiple different numbers over time.
Mm-hmm.
It in some decks was referred to as the justice card.
And it could be 11 or 8.
Uh-huh.
What's 11 plus 8?
19. Dude,
That's
I
weird.
didn't even make that connection, but I just thought, like, reading between the lines of sort of these two interpretations based on numerology, I was like, that sounds a little Robin Hoodie.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like,
interesting. I also love the 11 plus 8 thing. That's cool.
I know. I hadn't even gotten there yet because I was focused on reading this. When strength shows up reversed, it suggests a struggle between your inner and outer self. So it's very much in the same vein. That's crazy. Either you're being controlled by your emotions and your animal nature, or you're ignoring your instincts and only listening to logic.
Wow.
Brute force alone won't get you where you want to go. Set your ego aside for now.
And they didn't use just like guns, they used so much mind
Yes,
shit.
dude.
Mind shit. I don't know what I'm trying to say.
Mind fuckery.
They used their brains, man.
It was, yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay. In a reading about money, inner fears, insecurity, or indecision may be interfering with your prosperity, or you may be using the wrong means to gain financially.
I feel like, yeah, probably that was the wrong thing to do.
If the reading is about your job, you may feel overwhelmed by a situation or uncertain how to handle it. I feel like if the guy who does the business end of the dealings, when you're, the meth producer just suddenly dies, you're like, how the fuck do I keep up this same lifestyle?
Wow.
I guess rob banks, but also don't. Just to be clear,
yeah, just don't. Obviously, it never ends well for anybody.
Yeah. Wow. This card can also mean you're trying to muscle your way ahead, which will likely fail. Your position may not be as strong as you think.
Yeah, I feel like maybe they were a little bit cocky at the end with that test run. And
a little bit.
Can strength exist without opposition? I was like, I just love the first line. Because there was opposing sides. There was like the cops and the robbers. The cops and robbers.
Caps and rabbits.
The salmon's strength is only necessary, only meaningful when positioned against the current. Strength against all forces that push back against him, against doubt, against the water, against competition. It is that countering force that gives him the strength to face things directly, to fly upward, to leap. The salmon ponders this. Ooh, it just reminds me of like being like the adrenaline junkie. Like, would he have done this if there wasn't something opposing him?
Yeah, I feel like that was such a driving force.
Yeah. He's the salmon.
He's the salmon.
The salmon ponders this, or more likely doesn't, as he charges forward in a single-minded, lustful drive.
I feel, wow.
Yeah.
He is the salmon.
Wow. Let's do it again. Like in the very beginning.
Yes. Yeah. No, that's immediately what I think of.
Wow. He is powerful and sure-finned. Yeah. So Hollywood.
Wow.
He is unstoppable by any force within or without.
Wow.
Except for, yeah. He did take control. He stopped, he stopped himself, basically.
Yeah. Wow. That's crazy.
I know.
Oh, I've gotten chilly willies like a couple of times today.
Yeah.
Full disclosure, we have recorded 2 episodes today.
Where we pulled 2 cards each.
Yeah, we did.
Not on purpose, but yeah.
We did our prezzies.
Yeah. Well,
it's been a full ass day.
It has been a full day, and your dog is rolling around on the floor. I can see her little floppy ears going back and forth. And
she is wildin'.
I think she's she's saying
she's like,
time.
I'm pretty much done with this.
I'm done laying in my bed for the day. Thanks.
Yeah, she would like to go and lay somewhere else and fall asleep.
Let's go watch some Swayze. I hope we can find it.
I know. It's got to be there. So, like, we'll find it.
We'll buy it.
Yeah.
Patreon.
Please support our ridiculous habit. Oh, man. Should we do the thing?
Let's do it.
Okay.
Have a creepy ass day. We'll see you next Tuesday. Unless we're up in our treehouse.
I still want a treehouse, okay? I stand by that.
Dude, you guys have to look at this treehouse.
It's wild.
It is so cool.
It's really cool.
There's like 10 levels.
I know. I need to see if I can actually find some more pictures of it because
I want to see the inside.
Yes, that's exactly what I was thinking. And in the documentary, you will see it. Oh. Okay, listen, we have to go, but
let's go watch the documentary. And
actually, maybe that.
Was it Point Break?
Point Break. And Heat.
And Heat.
We're not going to sleep the rest of the weekend. Okay, bye.